Hey everybody, this is Eric Mueller, the host of The Eric Mueller Show. You're tuned into the podcast that explores what makes any successful person's inner clock tick by unlocking the most impactful tools within their success portfolio. I'm joined today by Tonya Evans, a distinguished professor at Penn State Dickinson Law. She's an expert in blockchain, entrepreneurship, entertainment law, and more, and she's here to rock the mic with me while we debunk myths surrounding crypto and also explore some legal and regulatory issues that entrepreneurs out there may face within the uncharted waters of Web3. Let's head on over to the interview. Tonya, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Eric. Thank you so much. I'm ready to chop it up, and I'm really excited to have the conversation.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a fun one, Tonya. And really, before we dive deep into this entrepreneurial story that you have, and really the expertise you have revolving around crypto and digital technologies, we want to know what makes up your success portfolio. So if you're listening to the show for the very first time, probably the easiest way to view it is to think of a financial portfolio where you invest with money to pursue financial goals. Maybe you have a 401k, Roth IRA, personal investments, what have you. Well, here on the Eric Mueller Show, I really want to discover how successful people like Tonya invest in themselves and build that foundation for their success. So Tonya, start us off. What are some maybe skills, traits, habits, or mindsets that make up your success portfolio?
I love this question so much because it's dynamic. It's not static, actually, and I've even had to learn that in kind of my recent years, particularly being in the crypto asset space, because my first thought, like I'm a Gen Xer. I'm young on the outside, but old on the inside. And so what I was taught was all of the traditional things, and I've done all of those, right? So education is always the first investment. Certainly did that. Save yourselves. It's too late for me. I'm overeducated at this point. But real estate is really important to me. Having a balanced stock and bond portfolio. I actually met with my CPA and my financial planner this week alone. Like, this is really important for me every quarter to pay attention and to see the numbers, because the numbers tell the story. I used to, back in the day, not even want to look at the numbers, and I was more focused on income, but not putting my assets and my creativity to work. So I really had to change my my investment strategy. Now it's doing all of the traditional things, but then also going ahead and seeing what's the next great opportunity. And so that gave me an opportunity to really reassess what I thought about risk. You know, so many people talk about the absence of risk or avoiding risk. The reward is in the risk, but you have to calibrate it and understand it and level set. So my strategy is in an unemotional way to figure out, how do I put together a risk tolerant portfolio, really, to have things that I can predict, but to also really heavily invest in emerging markets as well. Because when something's up, something is down. We know that all markets have a life cycle. And so having a strategy up front allows me to avoid the FOMO and the FOGI, like the fear of missing out, but also the fear of getting in, which I think a lot of people get jammed up on when we're talking about crypto.
Yeah, I definitely think that's something I've felt when you see a particular crypto coin make a run. You think, gosh, why didn't I, even if you're in it,
Right.
Why didn't I just do more? And I think sometimes we're a little bit blind to thinking the opposite way of, like, I don't know if anybody out there has followed Terra or heard about the Luna collapse. And it's like,
Right.
If you were heavily leveraged into that, you probably would have felt a lot differently and thought, why did I put so much in there? So I think
Right.
it's
I got wrecked.
Exactly. You get wrecked. And it's easy to feel it from both angles, but it's like nobody knows exactly where these are going. No one can predict, even in the stock market. I mean, the indices, should be pretty stable over time. But even to predict when to get in and out is still difficult if you're doing it, in the intermediate or short term. And Tonya, I wanted to ask you, so you have experience as a former professional tennis player as well. So you have an athletic background. And so I come
Yes.
from a long distance running background. So where I'm going with this is there's certain ways to define success in athletics where maybe you can take first place in a race or you can win a title in tennis. You have a record. You're able to track things metrically. And I think that sometimes is where people can get caught up with success in their life, especially if you're out of school. You mentioned being highly educated. I think a lot of the listenership is also like very traditionally educated. And so there's grades, there's ways to measure success through that too. So let's say you finish the schooling and you get out to the real world. It's like, where do we go from here? How do we measure if I'm successful? Like what is success? So I want to ask you, Tonya, what would you define success to be for you right now? And how has it maybe changed over time, if at all?
It's really interesting but I really had to challenge my own assumptions about that very thing of what making it means. Like my original assumption was what I was taught: good education, the equivalent of a good government job. I'm using air quotes. Get a house, get married. That's a whole other topic for another day. Be remarried. You get insurance, you get a burial plot, you invest in your 401k or 403b or whatever, and then you ride it out. And I guess that's okay if folks generally are dying around in their 60s. But 60 is fabulous. 70 ain't bad. And my Nana lived to be 103. So
Wow,
the
that's long.
idea of success, she's one of the only people I know that literally died from old age. Her last words to us before we left her that night is "All's well that ends well." Okay.
Wow,
And I was like,
powerful.
she's a badass. She's a badass. She did it her way. She really did. And it gives me chills to share that story, but it also makes me realize, listen, okay, Gen Xer, you're going to be here a minute, God willing, and the creek don't rise, as my Nana would say. What do you think success means? And I think it's dynamic because it changes at every stage, not necessarily every age, but certainly every stage of life. Success to me in this moment means spending as much time as I possibly can, because it's literally the only thing I can't control. It's the only thing that is finite. Like, how do I position myself to do as much as I can to spend time with the people I love doing the things that I enjoy? That to me is success. Whatever the trappings are, and it looks different to everyone, right? You want a house with a picket fence and 2.5 kids and fluffy? Knock yourself out. Me, I'm traveling. I'm pretty conservative when it comes to spending funds, unless we're talking about a vacation. And the place has to be better than my house, and my house is pretty darn great, right? So success to me is if I want to loan myself out to a W-2 employer, excellent. But the minute that it no longer serves me well, or I feel like I've accomplished everything I came to do in that particular environment, then that I can safely offboard and still have the life that I'm leading. That to me is success.
Now, Tonya, do you ever struggle with being present? Have you ever found that it's difficult to either get, you're stuck in the past or you're worried more about the future? You mentioned that sentiment you just shared, about your grandma, and that's like, honestly, that's a really, it is a chilling, it's a heartwarming thought and feeling to hear last words like that, because you talk to people that, you don't have to search very far to hear about people being interviewed in nursing homes, and they have so many regrets. It's just a list of regrets of I wish I would have, or I could have, or should have. And it's like, that is being stuck in the past. And the future for those people might not be, who knows how long that might be. But
Right.
but the thing I'm thinking, there's probably people listening even right now, regardless of age, that are stuck in one of those phases and they're having trouble being present. I struggle with that as well. So I'm curious if you've also struggled with it, if you feel like it's something that you're able to train yourself into being more present. Or I mean, what advice would you give entrepreneurs out there that maybe they're stuck in the past or the future?
It's and really important for me, and I hope that my experience and the stories that I'll share with you will help folks, because again, this is an evolution, this is dynamic, and I feel like when we have new information, we get to make a new decision. So on one hand, I was taught like you make a commitment and you stick to it. Okay, that's great until it's not. I now have new information. I get to make a new decision But I waited a long time in my life to lean into that. Like my ethos and spirit, my mantra in this moment is if someone's going to be disappointed, it's not going to be me.
Love it.
That has a lot of weight to it, right? Because I'm not intentionally going out into the world to harm people. I always want to leave people, places, and things better than I found them. But if I'm living someone else's dreams, if I'm living to live up to, if I'm operating in a world energetically where my intention is to serve everyone else, or pour out of my cup when my cup is not full, I'm no good to this world. I'm no good to the person, and I'm damn sure not good to myself. So the idea of what do I need to do in order to prioritize myself, given the information I have today, I can, look back over time and catch the lessons and the blessings. But if I haven't released my desire that things be different in this moment, there is no hope for the future. And what I've learned about the present, the present is actually all we have. Like, that's an interesting flex. Yesterday is gone, as they say. Tomorrow hasn't come, as they say. All we literally have is this moment and this moment. And the moments in the future are literally the moment. When I can release myself and take the lessons from the past without the hangups of, like, the difference between learning the lesson and feeling shame about a decision, or being so anxiety ridden. Listen, I've been on the anxiety meds. I'm here to tell you. I've been there, done that, got the anxiety meds about what is going to happen in the future. The things that I can control are in this moment. And I have to trust. This is the part about trusting myself, given everything that I've accomplished in the past, that when I have new information, I get to make a new decision. So I'm going to make the best decision in the moment that works for me professionally, that works for me personally. I'm still a work in progress, but it certainly works for me in terms of my investment strategy as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of powerful things there. If you, I feel like honestly, listen back to that last 5-6 minutes. If you're out there and the podcast, have it on your app, or if you're on YouTube, rewind a little bit, because I think that there's a lot there, and it sounds, maybe sounds simple on the surface level, but I think there's a lot of depth to what Tonya just said there. And I think that helps, those of you out there that are feeling anxious. I'm going to include myself in there about the future, to think about the fact that you're not even guaranteed tomorrow. Like, it's a scary thought, but you can think about what might be, but what is now. And so that I think is helpful, to not get caught up in that. And she also, sharing about the past and just thinking you're operating on the information you had at the time and making, the best decisions you have with the information you were given. And so, trust your judgment and not be, shameful or look back and have regrets. I think it's resonating with me a lot, Tonya. So I think that was a fantastic way to start off our conversation. And if you're watching on YouTube, right behind Tonya's left shoulder is her book, Digital Money Demystified. And so now we're going to get into talking a little bit about crypto, a little bit about Web3, and some of the myths surrounding some of those technologies, and really, get it out there so that you can know, what is real, what is not, where do I believe and trust the information that I'm receiving from this ever evolving field. And so we'll just start off, Tonya, with what are some really common myths in crypto that you're aware of, that you want people to be aware of when they are either investing or just learning about that Web3 space and how they can, start to become an informed user of those technologies?
When I sat down to write Digital Money Demystified, it was really, I continually, because of the Advantage Evans Academy, received so many questions from people who say, you know what? You don't seem crazy. You don't seem like a carnival barker. You're definitely not a naysayer. You are a whole professor. So, like, how did someone like you get into something like this? And the something like this tells me that the headlines and the misinformation and the disinformation is really telling the story. It also makes me wonder who and what entities are informing the headlines that are keeping the everyday person from getting ahead, while the banks are fully leveraged and have for years now. I have this presentation where I'm like putting up slides of Deutsche Bank and JP Morgan. And I think of Jamie Dimon, who's like, Bitcoin's basura, don't do it, blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, they're working on JP Morgan coin. They are one of the fiduciaries for the new exchange traded funds for Bitcoin in the US now. So it's like, it's bad, but your high net worth individuals are getting the tea and you're not sharing it with the rest of us. Like, that's not what Bitcoin and the progeny after Bitcoin are intended to do. So that's one. And when I think about the myths, it's not just that they're out in the ether and some people are saying, I'm like, where's the narrative coming from? The narrative that it's too difficult, not regulated, not secure, a fad, a scam, drug money, only for the crypto bros, right? Even bad for the environment. I wanted people to have the right information, no matter what you do. One, the world has changed forever. The world in the last 2 years has changed more than in the last decade. And it's almost like birth pangs at this point. So many things are starting to happen more quickly. It's like, what are we like moving up to? We look at wars and rumors of wars. We look at the less, we're less focused on borders, although borders are very important for countries. And we think about government issued currency really to protect borders. But we are extending beyond that. I think so many more people are leaning into this realization that it's all or nothing. Either we all survive or we don't. And the fact that now with accelerated space exploration, it used to be some like far off Star Trek thing. We're literally living in it today, where countries around the world are reducing their independence on the US dollar because we can't seem to, like, we keep coming up against a human-made crisis in terms of our debt, the calibration of our monetary system. Literally, nobody has time for that because we all woke up and realized there's some place other than where we live, where people actually love where they live, and we need to exchange in value and trade. And what does that look like when it's not about a country, but about a globally recognized currency? I don't know what that currency will be. My bet is on something like Bitcoin, but also stable coins. So we got to learn the lessons. We can't fall victim to scam or fad. We definitely can't fall victim to fad. Bitcoin has been around since January 2009. ETH
Right.
came on the scene with gangsterine like in 2014, 2015, that gave birth to the proliferation of thousands of tokens. We now, in the United States and around the world, have exchange traded funds traded on the underlying value of Bitcoin, with Ethereum to come in some point in time, not a matter of if, but when. We have companies like Circle out there with USDC. The world is changing. And so the myths, we have to separate fact from fiction so that we can take advantage and speak this language.
And do you think is it fair to say that getting rich quick in crypto is somewhat of a myth? I mean, I know it's happened. I mean, there's case studies of people that have done it. I've had some personal friends that have done very well. One even, was into Dogecoin in 2014. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, won. Yeah, exactly. They killed it. And so you hear of that, but I think maybe I'm wrong, Tonya, but I think in the here and now, we're sitting here in 2024, is it still possible for someone to get in on a coin that just goes, let's call it goes to the moon quickly. It's going to flame out. It's probably going to go to zero, but they timed it perfectly and they really did accomplish the get rich quick. I don't really group Bitcoin and Ethereum into that. I mean, you can do really well with those during bull markets, but I look at those more of as like, that's kind of investing in crypto for the long term. I'm excited about where those might be in a few decades, not so much as, the next 6 months. But what are your thoughts on that? Am I totally off base, or is there some truth to that?
I'm right there with you. I'm actually a pretty conservative crypto investor. Is that a thing? Is it an oxymoron? I don't know. Right. I stay pretty close to, the OG. I love Ethereum. I'm the former chair of the Maker DAO. the Maker DAO's foundation. So I was brought on kind of like in Maker 2.0 to lead it toward full decentralization, and we were successful in doing that. For those who don't know, Maker DAO has not only the governance token MKR, but also DAI, right, which is a really important stable coin in the ecosystem. And I'm now a board member of Digital Currency Group, used to own Gemini, owns Grayscale, and a bunch of things. So, I've seen it from all different places and spaces. I think that when you're looking at Bitcoin, when you're looking at ETH, those are important foundational coins. And also to understand the difference between a coin and a token. A coin is a native asset of a particular blockchain. So what the Bitcoin coin is to the Bitcoin protocol or the Bitcoin blockchain, which manages its transactions and balances, or its transactional data, right? ETH has its own thing, Ethereum virtual machine, et cetera. But then there are thousands and thousands of tokens that don't have their own blockchain, but actually record their transactional data to a particular platform. And so you need to understand enough to be able to distinguish between the different types. I own Bitcoin, I own ETH, I own a couple of tokens, a few, not just a couple, a few tokens. Either I know somebody on the team, or if they're pseudonymous, then I believe in the project. For example, meme coins are going to continue to do what memes do. I am not a trader. I don't have the risk tolerance, and I'm not trying to be up 24/7, 365, because the crypto industry is very different than our traditional legacy system. There are no holidays, there are no weekends, there's no time off for good behavior, right? So if you're going to do that, you have to be about that life and like stand 10 toes and be in it to win it. I do not have time for that. And I don't believe in timing the market. I believe in time in the market, to your point, right? I also know that wealthy people win both in bull markets and bear markets. Am I going to long something? Am I going to short something? Like, I had to learn all of that language so that I win in all seasons, so that my portfolio within the crypto asset class, but across all assets, is going to be sufficiently balanced, because this is a new asset class. It's emerging. It's doing what emerging asset classes do. It's literally no different than any other emerging asset class. High volatility, unclear regulations, right? But now that we have more regulatory clarity, not enough, but more, with ETFs for Bitcoin, et cetera, a few other signals this year, it seems like we're moving closer to just getting more stable institutional money coming in, et cetera. So I'd be careful with the memes, unless you have money to burn and you like to gamble. Like, it's the same thing as a penny stock. Why the hell would I have a penny stock if I could have more shares of the other thing that is proven over time? No judgment. That's just not my investment thesis. So if you're going to do that, then do all of the other prudent things. And if you have money to burn, then do the others, is probably a good recommendation.
Yeah, the gambling aspect kind of makes me think, like, just thought, if you have, let's just say $5,000 and you put it all, if you're in an actual casino and you put it all on red on a roulette wheel, let's take away the green numbers for a minute and just pretend it's a 50-50 shot. So if that comes up red, you've now doubled that money 5 to 10. Thinking of it in terms of crypto, I would say, obviously it's not a 50-50 chance, but if you were to take 5,000 full dollars and put it into some risky meme coin or something where it's like, there's not the backed longevity that we have with ETH and Bitcoin, you may hit it and you may do fantastic. But it's like, right, think of it more of like a lottery. You're buying like a lottery ticket almost, where the odds are probably pretty overwhelmingly high that it's not going to pan out. And so at least not adopting that as a strategy would at least be the way that I would approach it personally. I don't know if we have someone out there that's listening and really is wanting to, we could call them crypto curious. They're wanting to get into the market, but they're not certain where to start. And they're not looking to, they're not in love with gambling. They're probably just, maybe they have $1,000. They're just trying to get into it. What would you advise them, Tonya? Is there a strategy you found helpful? Are there a couple options to pick from, or if really hold their hand here, like what would you say to that person that wants to get in there, but they don't know a ton? Maybe they're completely naive to crypto and blockchain entirely.
So I'm looking at Bitcoin and ETH in particular that have, you can look back, you can go to coinmarketcap.com. I'm not, sponsored by them or anything. You don't pay anything to do that. But from an agnostic point of view, there is, they aggregate and have data on every single coin and token, every DeFi project, a lot about NFTs, and a great learning platform for free 99. That is the place where I have all of my Advantage M's Academy students go. I teach blockchain, crypto, and law at my law school. Shout out Penn State Dickinson Law. That's where you go to get aggregated data about everything. I don't even actually search a coin or a token on a browser because I think that's unsafe. I'll go there. They vetted the links, and it can go through. Then you can see the transactional history. You can literally, today, you can see the volume of trading. You can see everything. Start to become a student in terms of intellectual curiosity. Invest first in that. I also do not recommend that you wait until you feel like you figured it all out. No, none of us. I'm couched as an expert. Literally, none of us is an expert because it changes every day. But this is about financial empowerment. It's about privacy. It's about autonomy. Like, we're talking about crypto, but what we're really talking about is freedom. Freedom with options. And so starting at CoinMarketCap, there are plenty of free, obviously buy, digital money demystified, but it's like not an either or, but a both and. There are plenty of places where people can now get free or low cost courses, short courses. There's so much information now in 2024 that didn't exist in 2017, I assure you, or even the OGs before me. And then pick a platform that you already know, like, and trust. That's, Cash App, Venmo, other, Fidelity is in the market, BlackRock is in the market. They have exchange traded funds, etc. And buy something. You don't have to buy a $70,000 coin, for Bitcoin in order to be in the game. You literally can buy $5 worth. You've done worse. I promise you have done worse or less with $5, $10. Buy some and keep it on that platform. That is not my long-term strategy to have you do that, but you already trust them. You already know them. They make it available for you to buy crypto, Bitcoin across the board, because it's clearly a commodity. We're arguing about some of the others, right? Once I had some skin in the game, when you got my money, you got my attention. And the idea of being able to buy on Cash App or Venmo or the PayPal, as long as you can pull your crypto off of the exchange, then that is a place where I would send you first. And then finally, get interested at least in stable coins. You're in the ecosystem, but outside of the volatility, which is really what shakes people, right? So that you at least have, and then you have options, like you buy $500 worth of a stable, Tether, USDC, whatever. And then you have something there that you can use and actually buy other coins or tokens on an exchange basis. So those would be the three things I would do.
Would it be too early to go into the discussion about keeping, money on an exchange versus a hot wallet versus a cold wallet? Because I felt like when I first got into the crypto space, I wasn't wholeheartedly aware of really the differences or the exposure you might be leaning into that you don't want if you have something on an exchange. I guess just what are your thoughts on that, Tonya, with kind of those three, the three that I understand it, where you get an exchange, hot wallet, cold wallet. Can we maybe just talk about that real quick?
Absolutely. So an exchange, by its very nature, is where you go onto a platform. It could be Gemini, Kraken, Coinbase. I think people are very familiar with, and transfer assets onto a company's platform so that you can trade one cryptocurrency for another. You can also, a part of my book talks about going from cash to crypto. There needs to be some onboarding into the space. And then when you cash out of crypto back into fiat, which is government issued currency, you need some type of platform there. If you and I were just sending Bitcoin back and forth, we wouldn't need an exchange. I do not favor exchanges, and you certainly shouldn't leave. These are not banks. They are literally places where you go to exchange one asset for another. So let's use FTX as the example. You send money onto the FTX exchange owned by our not friend ever, rotten in jail for at least 25 years. You transfer assets onto FTX. At that point, you no longer control the asset. What you receive is a destination wallet account, right? An IOU that now it's under the control. Like, you have to trust that entity. You are there for the purpose of exchanging one asset for another. After that transaction is complete, the idea is to pull it off of that exchange. That's not a place where you sit. Now, centralized exchanges were making it very attractive. And I've been there. I have something tied up in Gemini because it was on Gemini. It's nothing that I miss or is going to break my bank. I'm not happy when I'm not in control of my stuff, but I left it on a centralized exchange. The people who transferred on the FTX, did their exchange and got off, they don't have any issue. The ones that parked their assets on the exchange with the promise of a high interest rate, which is very attractive, but unbeknownst to them, SBF and his motley crew of crooks. Now that we can say that, I'm a lawyer, so I would ordinarily say allegedly. It's no longer alleged. He's literally...
It's confirmed, yeah.
Right, it's confirmed, right? Right? But then he has the sister company, Alameda Research, unbeknownst to the depositors. They're pulling it out, making high-risk trades. That's not a crypto issue. That's a centralized exchange issue where the trusted intermediary went bad, breaking bad. Right? Is a dangerous place because even the good actors, they're here until they're not. We've seen that time and time again. The lights go out. What's your recompense? Right? With banks, we don't even get the full value. You know, the FDIC in the banking industry will give you what, 100,000, 150,000 back, 100, I think it is. If I'm getting $100,000 of my money back, I'm literally just going to jump out of the window. It's right. For some people, it's like, yay, at least I got my less than $100,000 back. That's not a power move. Think about Silicon Valley Bank, where you had all of these entrepreneurs and innovators. If you give them $100,000 back, that is literally a bad day. So we have to get clear about exchanges. The idea is to have your own cold storage wallet, one that is not connected to the internet, something like a Ledger, a Trezor. There's so many out there now. And then there are, warm wallets where at least you have an app, and you need to treat each of them like, if something's on a Ledger, I have no intention of using it. It's not even in my house. It's something out there in the world. It's holding whatever it holds, and I have no intention of it's like, you'll pry it out of my cold dead hands. Other things for regular transactions, stables, your memes of the world, or other things where you have a greater likelihood of exchanging them or using them. So some things I have in my actual wallet, some things I have in a bank account, some things I have, south of France, right? You have to decide what's in your best interest, but you have to learn the difference between an exchange, cold storage, warm storage, hot storage, in order to make the best decisions in the future. You don't have to do it now. But this is the language that Eric and I want you to understand so that it's less frightening, since we fear what we don't understand.
Yeah, absolutely. Fearing what you don't understand is certainly, I think, probably the basis of a lot of things. I just think in my mind, what am I afraid of? And it's like, it is probably rooted primarily in a lack of knowledge and, lack of confidence because of that lack of knowledge. And I think there's also another side to this where you have people listening that maybe they are, a little bit well-versed into crypto out there, but they're business leaders and they have, maybe they're entrepreneurs and they own their own, company themselves, maybe small, medium, large size companies. And they want to get, involved in using crypto maybe as a transaction where they can accept it on their storefront online. Maybe they want to accept Bitcoin for their services. What are just some legal or regulatory issues, Tanya, that they should at least be aware of? From a 10,000 foot view, just a brief overview of things to keep in mind and to maybe delve a little bit deeper into, depending on what business they're in, to make sure that they're covering their bases and that they're safe. In terms of the really those uncharted waters we kind of talked about with crypto and Web3.
Think if you're a merchant and you're interested, there's so many opportunities. I used to teach up in New Hampshire, and we had this area that was known as Bitcoin Row in where was it? It was like in Plymouth or I don't want to misquote. I love to have my facts in front of me. I don't have it in front of me now, but um, there was a whole row of businesses that accepted Bitcoin. And there's like a Bitcoin ATM there, et cetera. And those places are not, all over the country, but definitely all over the world. In fact, I think it would be a really cool exercise to see like where the most Bitcoin ATMs, because those people are really about it, wherever those are. Um, for a merchant, it's probably best to use some type of third party system, because how, at least in the United States, that crypto is taxed as property. So it has the word currency in it. It can be used as a medium of exchange, it can be used as a unit of account, right? But also, every time you are like exchanging one token for another, let's say somebody's paying in one and you're converting it to a token, you really want to be clear about the tax implications of what happens. I would love for somebody to pay me in Bitcoin, right? I'm not trading out of anything else, but the first interaction when you receive may not be the taxable issue, but how you dispose of it, how you trade it gets complicated. And so having some type of trusted third party to manage that, does it need to be segregated? Are you working in a country where it's prohibited? There are state and local laws and federal laws. That being said, just because Bitcoin in the United States, for example, is not the legal tender, meaning backed by the government, does not mean that it's not valuable. It also doesn't mean that it's illegal. When we go back to the bartering system, if you want to give me a chicken for two pairs of shoes, that's between us, right? As we got like outside of our trusted ecosystem, we had to find some level setting way to exchange value around the world. So now we have the physical coins and money. What we learned in the pandemic, dirty, nobody cares, expensive. Like we're already with a digital veneer. So the idea of merchants accepting it, and many merchants do. And they're just like, if you're not in this game or at least learning about it, I think you're going to be behind pretty soon.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. It's something I feel like I've seen less of now. I don't know if it kind of like boomed in the 2020, 2021 when it felt like everybody was making money in crypto. You could go to merchants that, would accept it. I feel like it went away a little bit. I don't know if that was just the sites I was looking at. I didn't see it as much. But I think you're right, Tanya, that it's going in that direction. Like we're not going to put the genie back in the bottle, so to speak. We're going into those uncharted waters. It's changing every day. It's evolving. It's a 24/7 market. There's no days off. Like it's
Right.
the more I talk about it, the more it's like, gosh, this is kind of scary if you're thinking about it, either from a personal or a business, transactional standpoint. And before we get too close to the end here, I just want to mention at least your podcast Tech Intersect. So being a podcast host yourself and being a professor, just broadly as an entrepreneur, you have all these things on your table. You're very accomplished. Doesn't take long reading your bio to see all the things you've achieved thus far. Kudos to you, Tanya. That's really, really inspirational. Do you ever feel overwhelmed? Do you ever feel like you've taken on too much? I mean, how have you balanced being able to, teach at the collegiate level, in a law school at Penn State, and shout out to the Nittany Lions there, as well as host a podcast and be able to be on other people's podcasts and author a book? Like, share with us a little bit about that entrepreneurial kind of maybe challenge and how you've overcome it, or maybe you found it to be a breeze. Maybe you found it to be super easy.
Oh gosh, it's so interesting because, before we hopped on, you also mentioned my time with tennis as well. I think being an elite athlete like prepared me for a lot of things going on and prioritizing, not having everything in the same moment. Shout out to my coaches, because I was actually recruited both for basketball and tennis when I was coming out. But I was coming out at a time before the WNBA, before what is now does not now even exist, the ABL. The ABL league was a tight league. We had the Rage in Philadelphia. Dawn Staley was coaching that at the time. So that's real vintage right there. But the idea of prioritizing and also giving myself, now this is a recent revelation, not, I used to color inside the lines a lot and kind of check the boxes, like do everything that was supposed to be within the four corners, doing well in school. I was the editor-in-chief of my law journal, like clerked in the Third Circuit, do all these big things. What people don't realize now, because so much time has passed, at night after I left the firm, I was going to the nearest coffee shop to perform poetry.
Wow.
I was part of Def Poetry Jam back in the day, and I was a runner-up in Philly. Some guy from New York came down and beat me, and that's a whole story for another day. Anyway, I'm still not better. It's fine. But having the balance is what I tell my students all the time. If you don't have some type of outlet, some type of balance, like my entrepreneurial endeavors fuel me. I believe very strongly in options, but I also know, again, anxiety medication to prove it, you can't do all the things. I think historically I've had my head down just kind of doing things. And one day I looked up and I was exhausted because my mind is constantly racing of one more thing, or let me go talk to Chat GPT. I'm sure we could come up with X, Y, and Z for a new marketing campaign. And I'm speaking over here. So, and the book, I'm a writer. So writing is relatively easy, but all the other things to put it into place so I'm not the best kept secret, that's a whole ass job, right? On top of the other jobs that you've already mentioned. And I'm giving myself grace. Like, I used to think a lot about what other people think was very important to me. I want to leave this world better than I found it, but I really just want to give myself the freedom to iterate like a true entrepreneur. Doesn't work? Cool, new information. Like, I'm trying to put together all of these disparate lessons into one that gives me permission, or to just say, you know what, I can't do it today, and tomorrow's not looking great, right? Like, to set my own deadlines, because I also know I'm at a certain age where you kind of lose a couple of people and you start to think more about what life really means. And God forbid I'm not here tomorrow, people will be super sad, and then they would figure that shit out.
Yeah.
Bottom line.
Right.
They would figure it out.
Yep.
So once I realized that, it's like, I'm important in my own mind. I am a Leo. I think very highly of myself. They would be super sad, and they would figure it out. So I'm giving them permission to figure it out so that I can have a quality of life that I can be proud of.
Yeah, I think that's a really, that's a really good way to view it, in terms of you're doing it for yourself, but you still want to leave a lasting impact that's providing a valuable legacy that helps others. So I think that's such a great way to view that, Tonya. And I think, as a final, kind of tying the bow on talking to you today, just really want to look at being a professor at a university. What is your favorite aspect of that? That's something I'll quote my dad here. He's always told me, he's like, Eric, I think you would make such a good teacher. And so it's not necessarily something that I have any intention of doing. I feel like this is kind of an outlet to learn, and also hopefully have others learn, from talking to people such as yourself, Tonya, about, the knowledge they have, and just learning, with the audience. But what's your favorite aspect about being a professor, and what maybe, is your favorite story about, seeing a student finally have that moment, that aha moment about getting a topic?
That's literally my favorite. You see it about halfway into the semester, particularly because I teach some pretty heavy things in addition to blockchain, crypto, and the law. I teach information privacy law, I teach administrative law, and I'm an intellectual property lawyer by training. Heavy stuff. And those first 6 weeks, I might as well be the Peanuts teacher. I try not to be, right? I feel like I'm the cool professor and we can talk, but it's heavy stuff. I think, so one, I'm obsessed with my students, and I love I've seen students evolve since I started teaching Bitcoin and blockchain stuff in particular since probably the fall of 2018, a little bit ahead of my time at the law school level. I feel like um, business schools were more invested in teaching their students than law schools are, even to this day, which I think is a major disservice. If we're sending law students out into the world without touching this topic at all, we're not doing it right. So I'm proud of that. Um, and as you said, I love seeing that light bulb go off because the questions they ask, they change where I can see, oh, that's the next right question when you're in the rabbit hole, quite frankly, right? So that's super cool. I think one of the best thing other than that, and it's giving me chills saying that, so that it probably is the best answer. But the second best answer is I get paid for being a lifelong learner. I literally get paid to be a lifelong learner. And for those of us who are lifelong learners who really dig that and are so excited about what we've learned that we want to share it with others, I see that in you, Eric. I see it. That's what makes it so special. And there's so many opportunities now inside and outside of formal education. I'm actually, yes, I'm a full tenured professor who says, this is not it. The way that we have set up the system is not sustainable, it's not practical, and it literally does not make sense, right? We should be able to modularize experiences so that you get what you need when you need it. Like chop it up, right? Get this and then get that. Like I believe in certificates and certifications and blah, blah, blah. Story for another day. But being paid to be a lifelong learner so that I can continue to share, I think is just wicked cool.
Yeah, and that's like one of the, I feel like, most common traits of the most successful people that I've talked to on the show is having that passion to never stop learning. And so what a better way to do that than to teach others? Because if you teach something, you clearly need to understand it pretty damn well to be, or you better, yeah, you better be able to understand it. Well, yeah. So Tonya Evans, author of Digital Money Demystified, podcast host of Tech Intersect podcast. We'll tag those in the show notes. Acclaimed law professor at Penn State Dickinson Law. All her links will be in the show notes, ways to connect with her. If someone does want to reach out, Tonya, is there a best way for them to do that? Do you use any social media or how should they reach out to you?
I love social media. It's the blessing and the curse. Please save yourselves. It's too late for me. So I am IP for intellectual property, IP Prof Evans across the web. And to learn more about the book, to get, a physical copy or an ebook, you can go to digitalmoneydemystified.com. So digitalmoneydemystified.com. And if you want to learn more about the tools, resources, I have webinars, things of that nature, then go to my company website, and that's advantageevans.com.
Boom. Well, Tonya, thank you for being really our crypto Mythbuster today, going on, all the topics of how to be safe in the crypto and Web3 space. We really cannot thank you enough. And personally, I can't thank you enough for being so flexible and scheduling this interview. Thanks for being a guest on the Eric Mueller Show. We'll look forward to following your journey, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Thank you so much, Eric. I look forward to the next time.